I don't want to make light of serious crime, but I was reading the newspapers very quickly this morning and I noticed Belfield, and I immediately thought this was Alex Belfield. It wasn't. Prison reform is a critical issue, and we need to balance uh, the responsibility for punishing offenders and also for ensuring their rehabilitation, and this within the context of basic human rights. And the UK has seen evolving policies on this front, but perhaps not fast enough, particularly regarding the rights denied to prisoners. And the conversation becomes especially pertinent when considering heinous criminals like Levi Bellfield, who has now been denied the right to marry under the new Victims and Prisoners Act. Prisoners in the UK are already denied certain rights such as voting, and this recent legislative move to prevent serious offenders from marrying or entering civil partnerships in prison reflects a further tightening of that screw. And those who've committed the most grievous offences should not enjoy privileges that are fundamentally life affirming. This argument, Shabana Mahmood has said, is that allowing these criminals to partake in such events would be a cruel irony for victims and their families who were robbed of these very opportunities. Levi Bellfield is a notorious figure, serving 2 whole life sentences for the murders of Milly Dowler, Marsha McDonnell, and Amy Delagrange, and the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy. His crimes were not only heinous and deplorable, but marked by a complete disregard for human life. His recent attempt, therefore, to marry while imprisoned has sparked appropriate outrage and accelerated legal reform. The government's swift action to prevent such marriages underscores a broader moral stance. The state should not facilitate moments of happiness for those who have caused unimaginable grief. It's not the purpose of prison to enact revenge, but it's not the purpose of prison to provide happiness. It's the purpose of prison to provide change. In contrast, by the way, of course, Alex Belfield, this former local BBC presenter who faced who was convicted for harassment of people like Jeremy Vine. The nature of his crimes and the consequences are vastly different from Levi Bellfield's, but the confusion between the two is an important aspect of public perception, at least my perception and my response. One's a serial killer, and the other is a disgraced broadcaster. Clearly, there's no relation between the two except for the similarly unfortunate surname. And even there, I think Alex Belfield has got 1 L, Levi Bellfield has got 2 L's, but they're both incarcerated, and one will probably never see the light of freedom, the light of day again, and the other one probably will not be able to go back to his former career of presenting on radio. But ideally, prison is an educative process where the person comes out the other end a better person than they went in, or they learn something while they're in, even if they're incarcerated for life. To what extent should society deny prisoners rights? There's a big debate about whether or not prisoners should have the right to vote. While rehabilitation remains a cornerstone of the judicial system, it's arguable that privileges should be justifiably withheld from those who've committed serious crime. And the move by the UK government reflects a broader consensus that some rights can and some rights should be denied to those whose actions have irrevocably harmed others. And so while there's a great deal to be done in prison reform and in rehabilitation, the balance between punishment and education, the rights and restrictions, is nuanced and still something that requires. Prison reform is often an afterthought in the government's agendum, but it needs to be at the front of our thinking. People like Rory Stewart, who was for a short while a prisons minister, have very much highlighted the importance of prisons and the inadequacy of our British prison system. We need to do more. We need to think more broadly. It's not just about punishment. It's also very much about rehabilitation. And I'd be very interested to know what you've got to say about this story. I'm in two minds about it. But I certainly don't think somebody who has committed such crimes and caused such grief should be in receipt of what seems like a reward. But at the same time, anything that can contribute to a better character is something that should be encouraged.